Hi, I'm Annmarie Kelly, and welcome to this episode of Not Your Mother's Marriage. I'm the person who found a new and unique approach to marriage that helps you to maintain your identity and your independence and your personal power. It's different, and it's not your mother's marriage. So lately we've been hearing a lot about quid pro quo. If you listen to the news at all, or if you've lived in a cave, if you haven't lived in a cave, then you've been hearing about it. We hear about quids and quos and what all of that means. We've been hearing it in terms of politics. But I'm going to ask you to think a little differently about quid pro quo today. I'm going to ask you to think about it in terms of marriage. Sounds a little different, but hear me out. Let's start with what a quid pro quo is. A quid pro quo, it's a little hard to say. Giving something and getting something. It's a favor for a favor. It's the expectation of, I'm going to do this, and when I do this, you're going to do this. That's what a quid pro quo is. Now, here's why it's important to you as an empowered woman. I'm wondering if you ever got snookered by what I call the curse of compromise. Have you ever done this where you say, well, I'm going to do this because I know that when I do this, this person I'm doing it for is going to do something for me. So you go into it, you make that compromise, and then that person doesn't do anything, doesn't do what you expected, doesn't return the love. And you think, what the hell? So that was a quid with no quo. When that happens, you sort of feel, I think what happens, and I think women are socialized to be the ones most often, not always, but most often, they're the ones that are socialized to just give and give and give, and not have that expect something in return. And then what happens is, down the road, you get ticked off. You're angry about it. You're saying, well, I feel used. You've had that happen, I know. Part of the curse of compromise. And the curse is that it eats away at your self-esteem. It steals a piece of your identity. And you wonder when that happens, it doesn't just affect you in marriage, it affects you even when you go someplace else, out in the workplace or with your friends. Something that eats away at your self-esteem just doesn't make sense for you in the world. You don't want to do that. That curse of compromise will get you every time. So here's the idea of the quid pro quo. You give up being so self-sacrificing and work on being more self-confident. That when people don't like to ask, but in the quid pro quo, you're saying, well, I will do this for you, and you're asking for something in return. When you are used to that, and you know, it's hard for women a lot of times to ask for raises at work, but when you're doing this, this helps you prepare for asking for something more even in the workplace. And here's how it would work. I'll give you this example. Let's say your spouse or your partner wants to go to a holiday dinner at his family's house. And you know what? You know that his mother hates you, or his father teases you mercilessly, or there's a bunch of kids screaming and you can't stand it, or something, and you just don't want to go. A lot of times, many women will just bite their tongue and they'll go and they'll be tense the whole day because they feel like, I'm going and I hate doing this. When you're doing this in a quid pro quo, what you would do is say, what would I want in exchange for doing this? If I'm willing to do this, if it really makes a big difference to my partner, how can I make it work for me too? So you might say, well, you know what? I would like to go see a show on Broadway, or I would like a weekend away with my girlfriends. Or maybe you would just like a weekend away with your sweetie, just the two of you. So what you might want to say then is, okay, I have a deal for you. I'll do this thing and go to the family dinner because I know that it means a lot to you. But here's what I'd like in exchange. And whatever it is that you decide that you want in exchange, the something for something. And presuming that your spouse or your partner says, yeah, I can do that, then you go to the family dinner. And you go to the family dinner not with a chip on your shoulder. You go to the family dinner and you make nice. And you do everything you can to really enjoy yourself. And if your mother-in-law says something snarky, or your father-in-law says something that doesn't make you feel good, you just think of, I'm going to be sitting in a theater in Broadway seeing what I want to see. Or I'm going to be with my sweetie for a whole weekend by ourselves. Or me and my girlfriends, we're going to get toasted that first night that we're out together. So every time something rubs you the wrong way, you just think of that one good thing that you have gotten in return. So that's the quid pro quo piece of it. Here's another example. There's a woman I know who, when she decided to be a stay-at-home mom, and she and her spouse made that decision, she got it in her head that the stay-at-home mom piece would be her job. Saw it as a job. She was giving up her career, but she was giving it up for the career she saw of motherhood. She really saw it as a job and a career. Her spouse worked all week on his job, and she worked all week on her job. And then they both wanted relaxation time. on the weekend. So this didn't happen by magic, I'll tell you, because at the very beginning she said, he would come home and then he'd want to relax on the weekend. I'd still be doing all this stuff. I'd be making dinner and I'd be doing all this stuff and then I'd be ticked off. But he would say, but I worked hard all week. I want to relax. So she figured she would take that same attitude. I worked hard all week. Now I want to relax. So they worked it out in their quid pro quo that she would go out on Saturday afternoon, whether it was with her girlfriends or her sisters, or every Saturday she went to lunch, and she was gone for 3-4 hours. On Sunday, in the nicer weather, he would play golf. He'd go out early in the morning. He'd come home in time for the kids to have lunch. The rest of the Sunday would be family. So both of them got a little relaxation. They got some family time in. And then on Monday, they both went back to their jobs. It was a change in mindset for her. She did that for years until the kids got too old. And then they're like, do we have to do this? That whole thing with dad being with dad on the Saturday. That was a quid pro quo for her. She got something she really needed and wanted on Saturday afternoon after working really hard all week. And in exchange, that was her exchange. And so she was really comfortable with him going out to play golf with the guys, or sometimes it was basketball on Sunday morning, as long as he was home by noon and they could do family things together. So that's kind of how the quid pro quo would work. Benefits of doing that: when you do your own quid pro quo, when you give and you know that that person that you're giving to has in exchange is giving you something that you really want. That makes you feel really good about being who you are. Keeps your identity intact. It makes you feel more confident because you don't feel used. It doesn't eat away at your self-esteem. And it reminds you that your relationship is a two-way street. It's not you doing all the work, it's a give and take. So there you have it. There's your Not Your Mother's Marriage tip for this episode. I was glad to be with you. If you want to talk to me, you can find me on 5yearmarriage.com. You can get the book on Amazon. It has a lot of information in there and a lot of tips for you. It's 5-Year Marriage, Shifting the Marriage Paradigm. And you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at 5-Year Marriage. I look forward to seeing you again. Please come back. Jen's on.